This is Gary Richard Arnold, this 5th day of June, and a couple days after a major primary in the state of California. California, if it were a nation unto itself, it would be the 8th largest nation in the world economically. To give you a little bit of background of myself, I don't think I'm that well known out there, but this is some of the excuses of the reasons I talk the way I talk, and I come to the conclusions that I've come to. Way back in the 1964, I was at the Cow Palace in San Francisco when the Republican nomination was going on, and it was the first time in decades that a Republican, not under the control of the Eastern establishment, caught the nomination, and that was by Barry Goldwater. During that election, Phyllis Schlafly put out a little book called A Choice, Not an Echo, which was an excellent expose on the Bilderberger Society. And so we're going back, that was only 10 years after the Bilderberger Society had been formed, which was 1954. So it'd be 1964, you had a decade lead on that. But she did an excellent job on that. 2 years later, I ran for state assembly, kind of innocently at that time, running against a nominee, and that nominee happened to be an associate of Morton Sobel, who was a convicted Soviet spy having to do with the attempts at getting nuclear secrets. In our campaign, we use a couple of unique things that very seldom were used at in that era. We used about 47,000 paperback books that we put a folder in, so it would fold out and it would attach to the books, and if somebody got a book on their doorstep and they put it on their table, no matter whether it was face side up or face side down, they'd see my name across the top of it. But that having been done, the opposition got very concerned, very, very scared, and they had set up a couple of speakers into an assembly district, which is about half the size of a congressional district, and they set up speakers in there to go to church from the National Council of Churches with an attack on my candidacy. Also, the AFL-CIO set up a couple labor offices in that particular district, and this was the first time they went to ethnic mailings, depending on what race or what color or whether you're a union member or not. You got a different brochure. And the Grand Los Angeles Times and the public TV stations down there also made attacks. This was in Southern California, in the Westchester-Inglewood area. And this was a little tiny assembly district in a massive population in Southern California. And so concern-worthy that they bought radio ads in Mexico on XEMO that covered all of Southern California, which seems like a bit of overkill. And at the time, I was certainly feeling the pressure. I had no idea what was coming out of the woodwork at me. But they broadcast from Mexico into all of Southern California in order to affect this one assembly race. The registration against us was about 2-1, and we came within a few thousand votes of winning. 2 years later, I ran for state assembly in a contested race. And Reagan was then governor of the state. We supported Ronald Reagan, even concerned about his earlier 13 years working with the United World Federalists on their letterhead, in fact. But his speeches before he became governor, in fact, one which is, I even recommend people go to it today, it's called A Time for Choosing. And it was such a winning and well-centered and well-spoken speech that we thought maybe he had changed his ways from having been the operative for the United World Federalists. In fact, his handler at that time was Cord Meyer from the OSS. And anyway, we crossed our fingers that he'd be different than Governor Brown. But as soon as he got in there, he started putting in the gun laws and the Rockefeller appointees throughout his cabinet. And if we go forward a little bit further into 1980, when there was the Republican convention in Detroit, by that time we thoroughly knew that Reagan was merely mouthing the Rockefeller plans, and we put out a newspaper tabloid. We penetrated the convention and had showed all of members of his transition committee, which were members of the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations, even after he specifically in Florida and a couple other states said he would go in a different direction than Jimmy Carter and not appoint members from the Trilateral Commission. And of course, the very vice president that he appointed was George Bush, who was a member of the Trilateral Commission. 2 years after that, after Reagan's presidency in 1980, I ran for Congress against Leon Panetta. And Leon Panetta, you probably know him as having been a member of the CIA or the head of the Department of Defense. But he was very active, and he had been a Rockefeller asset since 1962, and Nelson Rockefeller was wanting that coveted convention in 1964. And Leon Panetta has been part of the Pew Ocean Committee together with David Rockefeller III, wanting to turn the oceans over to the United Nations, and on and on. But that has also in 1982, when I had run for Congress, the winners of the nominations across the United States were invited to the White House by the Ronald Reagan cabinet, and they said that we could talk to some of the people on K Street, and we could see how things were run there, and it might be an advantage for our general election. And when I went back there, we were all gathered in the East Room of the White House, and Ronald Reagan was taking credit for large tax increases when really just weeks before he initiated the largest tax increase in American history, and in fact threatened those candidates sitting in that very room that unless they supported his tax increase, they would be cut off from Republican National Committee funds. So I did not think that was good, and I stood up and address that before the press, and it mentioned how he had shipped wheat to the Soviet Union and that the American people were getting the shaft, and the disappointment of the Trilateral Commission members, etc. And he finally ended our tableau with the words "shut up," and that put us on the map. We were on Good Morning America and Crossfire, and we were able to open up this newspaper tabloid or expose, and according to CBS News Central, we got more publicity than the rest of the House of Representatives combined. The story went from South Africa to Europe and all around the world. This was before the internet, but we got more information out about the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, with that one particular operation. But early in the Reagan years in the White House, he put together a thing called the National Endowment for Democracy, which was really an extension of the CIA, and it allowed them to foment what we see today with the so-called spring revolutions or color revolutions through the Mediterranean and actually through South America. Clinton exercised some of this power when they got rid of the nation state of Yugoslavia, and this world government operation has been nonstop, and it's certainly infiltrated both political parties, and it has been brought down to a local level. The United States certainly has been used as a source for funding the world government. And we taxpayers have been right in the mix of it and receiving doses of the United Nations propaganda from ever since 1945. But what we see here happening in California, we hear is happening all across the United States. And the guest I have on with me right now, his name is Bruce Tanner. Without care, yeah, I was out of touch. But it wasn't because I didn't know enough. and a reporter, and he chronicalizes local events and changes national stories into local and applies it locally. And this documentation by film goes to the community TV and is shown, and I'm going to throw out a few of the titles of the topics that he's done, and maybe he can elaborate on how effective and what he's seen at these various meetings. And I'm talking about the World Bank involvement in our local communities, such as ICLEI, some of their techniques referred to as the Delphi technique, a formal program called the UN Agenda 21 with different labels. And I've seen this man, Bruce Tanner, step up to the plate and make this cogent. He also belongs to a couple groups. We don't have a Tea Party in this area, but in fact there are some groups that have a broader sweep that attract more than just a segment of the political spectrum. And Bruce, if you could maybe tell us about some of the actions you've reported and by film and what your observations are there.
Alrighty. Hi, Gary. Santa Cruz, California, is an early adopter of UN Agenda 21. In fact, in Santa Cruz, in 1990, 2 years before Agenda 21 was even revealed at the Rio Summit, Santa Cruz County had a ballot measure that was called the Decade of the Environment. And this ballot measure was passed in 1990, and it's been reaffirmed by the Board of Supervisors, who are a cozy little bunch here, every 10 years. And the Decade of the Environment initiative included most of the major features of Agenda 21 in Santa Cruz 2 years before Agenda 21 even existed. Then Santa Cruz County in 1996 and 1997 put together a so-called Blue Ribbon Commission of local eminent citizens to put together something that ended up being called Santa Cruz Local Agenda 21. That came out in 1997. And I, in the process of filming one of the local Delphi technique meetings on the regional transit plan, which comes out of the regional government at AMBAG, the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, I had a chance to ask one of our current supervisors, John Leopold, about this document, which I showed him a copy of, the Santa Cruz Local Agenda 21, and John Leopold, on camera, had denied to my face that he had ever seen this document or heard anything about it. So Agenda 21 in Santa Cruz is kept way in the background. Right now, they're currently doing a new batch of regional transit plan meetings, which they have just rechristened Sustainable Santa Cruz County, using the wonderful word sustainable. And I missed the first two of these meetings, but I'm going to be going to one and filming it this coming Monday. I filmed almost all of the versions of the regional transit plan meetings. They use a technique called the Delphi technique, which was developed by the RAND Corporation, which is a technique for running meetings to create an artificial consensus and to marginalize anybody who's bringing information to the meeting that contradicts the story that they want to sell the public. I had a chance at one of these meetings to ask Kathy Prevasich, who is the current planning director in the county, about the Delphi technique and if she had ever heard of such a thing. And she denied on camera that she even knew anything about it. And she's in the process of running one of these meetings.
It's like getting a karate chop, two or three of them, and asking the person where you learn karate, and they say, "Well, I don't. What's karate?" It's outrageous. And as you say, they move this Agenda 21 through different names. It's the same conductor and the same people in the train, but it can go from the environment to transportation to whatever. And once they got people on board, the people on board appear weak, absolutely weak, and they've reached this psychological point from both Tavistock and the Rand Corporation where they can really manipulate people, and they're afraid to speak up. You might tell them how they break up the tables and the facilitators and how that might work.
Yeah, one of the main features of these Delphi-style meetings is that they do a presentation where they tell you the warm and fuzzy story of what they're trying to do, and it always sounds wonderful. And they talk about how they sincerely want to get the input of the audience, and then they may invite a couple of questions, but if the questions are uncomfortable for them or bringing up information that they don't want to have presented to the public there at the meetings, they immediately talk about, well, now it's time to go into our breakup sessions because people want to give their input. Don't people want to give their input? And so they'll ask, how many people want to give their input? And you'll see maybe 2/3 of the people there, they put up their hands because, first of all, they're uncomfortable with people standing up and giving information that contradicts the meeting facilitators because everybody has been trained, you don't contradict the teacher. And so they vote for, we'll go into breakout sessions. So then they break everybody up into little tables, and they'll put one, or in the case of me, frequently they'll put 2 or 3 of their people at the table with me so that if I start bringing up stuff that they don't want to have shared, they'll start making objections and say, well, we really don't want to talk about that. Does anybody really want to hear this? No, we don't want to hear that. And then they allow people to say their 2 cents worth. And even at meetings where I've gone and passed out flyers that explain to everybody that they're attending a Delphi technique meeting where their opinions are being solicited, but the facilitators are not in the least interested about their opinions, quite frequently everybody at the table or most of the people at the table will go on and give their ideas about what should be done regarding, say, the transit plan or affordable housing or whatever. They'll give their little ideas to the facilitators at the table at the breakout session, and usually these ideas are ideas that anybody who is trying to think about this stuff would come up in the first 2 or 3 hours at the most. So they're giving these ideas, which these planners have heard all of that. They're not being surprised by anything. Well, it sounds like we're going to a break here, Gary.
Minded, the Genesis Communications Network, GCN.
What a beautiful world this will be. What a glorious time to be free. What a beautiful world this will be. What a glorious time to be free. What a beautiful world this will be. What a glorious time to be free. What a beautiful world this will be.
See that happening?
That sounds like Santa Cruz, a beautiful world.
Yeah, I was saying through the music there that what they do is they try to create, this beautiful world out there. And if you agree to any part of it, it'd be like sitting down to some French dinner where they have 18 different courses. And if you happen to like dessert, it's interpreted that you endorse the whole meal, the whole thing. And the network, it's brought on, at least in the counties that are adjacent to us, through a machine made up usually of the newspapers. We've got the Bill Gates, Bilderberger, 3 major newspapers in this area, the Mercury and the Santa Cruz Sentinel and the Monterey Herald. We see nonprofits that pay no taxes, the Packards and the Panettas and the Haas and the Irvines, and the politicians who are resting their laurels on getting reelected through this the creation of popular support. And we did have an independent newspaper of sorts for a while that showed that the last climate change program that enabled the planning department to make law and create punishments and rewards for the people people living in our area. The Board of Supervisors literally turned their authority over to a planning department, and it turned out that the Mid-County Post over here said that that program was written by a member of ICLEI. Now, ICLEI is a front for both the World Bank and the United Nations. I don't know if you can pick up some of that from there, but they're involved from Salinas to Carmel to other areas, cities in the Monterey Bay area, actually training the public employees.
Yes, well, ICLEI stands for International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. It's a phony bottom-up organization where the planning comes from the top down. They actually changed their name for recently, or in the last couple of years, to hide the fact that they're an international organization. And ICLEI has been involved in the creation of AB 32 and the Senate Bill 320 that create the environmental mandates in California, in which all local governments now, by state mandate, have to reduce their greenhouse gases. And ICLEI has been helping all the local communities write their local plans for how they're going to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The County of Santa Cruz, while they're still working with ICLEI, it seems pretty clear, has denied that they have any contracts with ICLEI at this point. And Freedom of Information requests put in locally here have been scrubbed clean of any real information about the relationship between ICLEI and the county.
But what we did have was a newspaper actually talking to the man from ICLEI, saying that they contributed to the writing of the plan. But you're absolutely right. What's our county's head of the superintendent of public instruction? When you go to the national ICLEI site, we find that his name is on there. So it's not only the policy of local businesses and houses and how you use your energy, but it's being inundated into the children, and it's a propaganda, a very severe propaganda religion that they're imbuing in people across the age groups, and it's turned into a cult. We've got the county tax collector heading parades of jellyfish and octopi, saying that the oceans are going to rise and we're all going to die. We've got the head of the public instructions making demonstrations down at the city clock in order to warn us of this global warming, and it's so outrageous and so unscientific. They had a burial of some of the automobiles because the automobile is supposedly the death of all of us, when really carbon dioxide is plant food.
Right. Oh, yeah. And recently, we have a good friend who, at this point, almost on a daily basis, is sending us emails that she gets from her friends who are completely aghast that she's trying to give them information about the utility of carbon dioxide to the planet and the facts that show that carbon dioxide actually does not contribute to global warming. In fact, it's possible that carbon dioxide actually contributes to cooling the planet, because NASA research has actually shown that the CO2 in the upper atmosphere reflects massive amounts of solar energy back out into space before it can get to the Earth when there are big energy events coming in from the sun, like solar coronal mass ejections or things like that. The CO2 actually contributes to rejecting huge proportions of that back into space. And when NASA reported this, that was around the time that James Hansen, the infamous climatist from NASA, resigned and went on to become, he's now full-time working to propagandize the world about global warming. So I get these emails from my friend, and the things that these people say are just, they're outrageous, and they're manipulative, and they're attacking my friend for even listening. You shouldn't be listening to this stuff, you know. We are the experts. You shouldn't be listening to this. And it's sad that people are believing what you're being fed.
Right. What's truly happening here when we jump the issue and look at really where they're going, they're looking for what they call harmonization of laws. They want the laws the same in every community. And what you're talking about is the attack on the First Amendment. They have the attack on the Second Amendment, whether it's lead bullets or gun confiscation or any of that. It's in preparation for martial law and a North American Union, which has been advocated since the book Philip Drew, written by Colonel Mandel House's top aide.
Yeah.
And the attempt at what we see across the world with the Orange and Mediterranean and Spring revolutions is in the process here. And we see it by their arming of the federal government agencies, of the attack on personal self-defense, upon setting up an informant program called Next Door in our community, which is anything as dangerous as Stasi or the KGB. But
right, which is presented by the
local.
Can
you comment on how this is, even if you handle the issue, the ultimate physical enslavement and loss of liberty has been accelerated around us.
Right, but it's happening in our own minds. These people who are feeding my friends with this really manipulative stuff, they completely believe what they're writing about. They do not consider any of the information that she gives them, and they want her basically to shut up, you know, like Ronald Reagan said to you, you know. And I mean, right now, if you see something, say something-esque. Snitch on Your Neighbor program in Santa Cruz County is being run out of the sheriff's department, and we just had a sheriff's election here, and the official candidate won. So who knows?
Independently leading the way for the nation. Compelling talk for every political persuasion. We are GCN.
Federalism with the same tossing authorities over to regional governments. And in the state of California in 1987, we had the Democratic State Assembly Speaker talk about, he put the research committee, the Assembly Office of Research, and wanted to have a program for abolishing 58 counties and 445 cities. So what we're looking is this move to regionalization, and this is what occurs in virtually all the countries, whether it's the European Union or the North American Union, which they're pushing on us right now. A third very powerful lobby we find as one of the ingredients is an outfit called Common Cause that was set up by the Rockefeller family, IBM, and Chase, and its first head was John Gardner. He was a trustee of the Rockefeller brothers. But in California, it's called California Forward, and we expect that in most of the states there are organizations like this that assist in managing and pushing people around. But the good news is, and I want Bruce to talk about this a little bit, that we have some groups in the area here. They're not exactly the Tea Party. We have a forum gets people broader across the political spectrum, and some other little groups, and we've managed to attend some of the Delphi meetings. And Bruce, tell us what your experience is on when people show up, or what we've discovered out of those meetings.
Well, in Santa Cruz, we've gotten to the point where maybe 3, 4, half a dozen people might actually ask some pointed questions at the meeting level at these Delphi meetings, which the moderators or the meeting hosts don't appreciate that at all, and they do their best they can to cut it off at the pass, but we've been somewhat effective at getting some information out in them. We haven't done what some of the anti-agenda people in the North Bay area have done, which is effectively take over meetings. And they've actually forced the Delphi facilitators to leave the floor and in some cases completely desert the meetings because they have insisted that what they're selling is not good for the community. So Santa Cruz has a ways to go. As I was saying before the break, the Sheriff's Department is running our Stasi snitch program in the county, and there was just a sheriff's election, and we did have one particular constitutional sheriff's candidate who ended up getting 22% of the vote, Roger Wildy, but it wasn't enough, and the official candidate, Jim Hart, got over 50% of the vote, and he is now in. And so the Sheriff's Department is going to continue as business as usual. One thing that we had, a major thing that happened in our county was when they rolled out the smart meters, activists actually got our Board of Supervisors to vote up a moratorium on the installation of smart meters until they had the data that they were safe for people's health in particular. And the Sheriff's Department refused to enforce this moratorium. And in fact, the Sheriff's Department told one of the members of our group, Freedom Forum, point blank on the phone that the Sheriff's Department considered it to be a symbolic ordinance, and they had no intention of enforcing it.
Right. Well, we've had votes both in the city of Watsonville and the city of Santa Cruz against putting poisonous fluoride in the water. And lately in Watsonville, one of the recent ex-mayors who was funded by the Jesse Unruh Foundation and sent to Harvard and is now a state legislator, went in there and tried to force the poison there. It didn't happen because they just lacked the funds to do it. But this is after a majority vote of the people that they're doing this. I did want to give off my website number once or twice. If you go to newsexpose.org, you'll be able to find a lot of documentation about the sheriff and also about the governor's office, which is probably a little bit more exciting. We probably have a minute or two left on that, about how the Condoleezza Rice and ex-governor Pete Wilson and Darrell Issa, who belongs to the Rockefeller Rip-On Society, put out a hit piece on the constitutional candidate running for governor and how this Goldman Sachs former TARP manipulator is now crowned the Republican nominee to run against Governor Brown. But maybe you could add a little to the skullduggery in the state of California and how the Rockefeller Republicans seem they have a pretty good handle on it.
Well, yeah, it's astonishing. Well, they brought in Neil Kashkari, who's this horrible banker who's been involved in the whole so-called financial crisis and taking America down to a new level of financial destruction. At the last minute, they bring in Neil Kashkari, present him as a credible candidate for the Republicans, and he beats Tim Donnelly, who is really a wonder. I mean, he's a really well-informed and articulate candidate talking about applying reason and looking at what's really going on, and they managed to nose him out of the runoff with Jerry Brown. Of course, Brown will pummel Kashkari. Kashkari's just doing, his service to the realm of getting this pesky, well, I wouldn't say necessarily right-wing, but constitutionalist candidate, Tim Donnelly, out of the way before the election. But,
well, it was California Forward that put through this, the two highest vote getters, which eliminated all the independent parties and allowed everybody to cross over and vote each other's primaries. So whoever owns the newspapers can whipsaw the people into one direction or another and really have control. It was really a disgrace. And again, that's, you know, a lot of these groups that are wrapped in reform are nothing more than agents of the huge foundations and you know, the advocates of a North American Union. And I think we see what also is included in their agenda is their eugenics program, which is a radical depopulation of the planet. And we saw that with the Veterans Administration here recently, that was, you know, went up to some 40-some places that they've discovered so far, in which they are mechanically killing off the veterans, and this is the extension into Obamacare. And I think that's why they threw this recent news story out there now to get people's attention off this very specific intent to eliminate the population.
Oh, yeah. Now, that's something that, see, the educated progressives, they absolutely roll their eyes. If you were to say anything like that, they would go, "Oh, that's not possible." But over in England, you know, they have the Liverpool treatment pathway, which they have brought out in the National Health Service, and they actually starve people to death. They not only starve them, they deny them water so they can pass easily. Even over the objections of their families. And that's what's coming with Obamacare. It's definitely involved with depopulation. In America, they've created a situation now where so many of us have nothing gainful to do because they control people's ability to operate businesses through regulation, and they've decimated our industrial productivity. And so how can we even support the population? Of course, a lot of people are going to die if this continues.
Yeah, they've eliminated the middle class. They continue to use their so-called soft kill, which is really hard kill, with the associate products, whether it's the radio frequencies and the Gestapo meters, and which were set up by Fort Meade, and also partnered with ICLEI, which is again a front for the World Bank, with our major utilities throughout California. We'll take the efforts to take a look. I want to thank you very much, Bruce Tanner, for showing up on short notice on this program, and I hope we provided a little bit of information and the fact that we've made a little bit of progress on wrestling with these evil forces.
Henry Ford once said, "A man who stops advertising to save money is like a man who stops a clock to save time." Alex Castle here, the National